Oh yeah, like the outside or the bar event. The bar results came out today.
Did it?
Yeah.
Did I pass?
You failed. Remember when we got them, like it was a letter?
Yeah.
Now they go on the internet and they keep getting refreshed. Can you imagine the temperature?
Oh, yeah, that would be awful.
That's true. I had to wait for a letter.
Yeah, no, that's what I did too. Yeah, the letter.
And you tried to look at it without opening the envelope.
But if it's a big one, like, oh, they have all the stuff for registering, but it's the little one.
Yeah. Well, we used to call it the thin letter that you would get, you know, the rejections from the firms you were applying to.
Right.
You get the thin letters.
All right, let's call this meeting to order. Ryan, do your roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Gerdes.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman. Here. Counselor Kelly.
Here.
Counselor Hershey. Yes. Counselor Russo.
Here.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
I will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any agenda changes or conflicts for this evening's agenda? All right, I do have one. Sorry? Nope.
I'm just gonna recuse myself on one item.
Okay, what's that?
It is item number 18, planning item 2921, 406 West 7th Street, Butler, Kentucky. I just worked with the applicant and passed and feel it's most appropriate to recuse.
Okay, thank you. I do have a agenda change. I'd like to pull item letter F from the consent agenda, FAB grant recommendations, to be considered. Let's put it, if it's okay, we'll do it after the annexation hearing.
Okay.
Everybody okay with that? Okay. Any other changes? Okay. I'd just like to take a moment to recognize my friend Rob Gabriel. He passed, I can't do this, sorry. I got him. He passed away a week ago in a motorcycle accident. He was on our Transportation Commission. He was a dad. He's a father. He ran the PTA. He was the Colorado Bar Vice President and Senior Vice President. He's my friend. And I had a lot more, but I just appreciate if we could just take a few moments in silence for him. Thank you. He's also a hell of a lawyer. All right. Citizens appearing tonight before council. These are for items not on the agenda.
I believe Jennifer Banian wanted to speak, and she's in the other room.
I think there's others. It's good.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Banyan, I live at 1016 Minter. September 18th, Troy and Dondria Morris, who lived at 7th and Lincoln for 14 years, had a house fire. Their house was completely destroyed. Troy has third-degree burns on his hand and arm and his leg, and he's currently scheduling surgeries for that. And I'm seeing that some community support is in order. As council members, you are in a supreme position to make a difference in seeing these people through this terrible trauma. My direct appeal is, will you either individually or collectively help lend support to me and a few other people who want to help them out? I'm asking you to have compassion to see Troy and Dondria's plight as innately human and worthy of council's compassion.
Jennifer, is there like a GoFundMe or something?
I want to do some kind of a fundraiser or something.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
sir.
Yeah, please let us know and keep us posted on that.
No, you keep me posted.
No, you keep us posted.
Okay, I'm working with Charlie.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Jen.
Is there anybody else, citizens appearing before council for items not on the agenda this evening?
Is there an opportunity to comment on things that are on the agenda?
There's not. I mean, at that time, there will be, yes. Okay.
Wait, there's one more person.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Eric.
Okay.
Sure. Sure.
I'm Cheryl Kane. I live at 1801 Grand. I've lived there for 30 years. I've asked for 30 years to have the speed limit enforced. It hasn't been enforced for 30 years, and I would like to see that happen. I'm sure many of us in town would like to see that happen. Cars and trucks go by my house at 70 miles an hour. And I think that's a little fast since the speed limit is 25. So that's why I'm here tonight. I'm also here as, I used to come to every meeting for the 8 years that I was on a couple of committees here. I don't come anymore. I'm wondering why the sound system hasn't been improved in all of these years as well. I'm wondering why the citizen's voice doesn't mean anything here. And I think a lot of people in town are frustrated about that. Certainly I am.
Thanks. Thanks, Cheryl.
Is there anybody else who has comments for items not on the agenda? All right, now turn it over, well, council comments. Go, Troy.
I just got a couple things. I went to the Colorado Municipal League Conference a couple weeks ago, and I went to the Colorado Municipal League Conference a couple weeks ago, and there were a number of really good programs there, but one of them was one on climate action, and so I asked our city manager if we ought to adopt a climate action plan and learned that we actually have one. So I'm going to ask that we have that as a work session before the first of the year so that we can kind of meld that into the comprehensive plan. I don't know if we have time in the work sessions. Everybody raise your hand.
I mean, I can certainly put it in a file. I mean, I don't think there is no member of staff that is dedicated to tracking it. So, I mean, I don't think we'll have like a fancy presentation. But if you want me to put it in and we want to discuss it generally, sure.
Well, my idea was I wasn't expecting staff to do anything better than put it in the agenda packet, and then we could talk about whether we want to have that updated or not as part of the comprehensive plan was my concept. I wasn't asking for any staff time.
Okay.
Oh, I appreciate Jackie. As far as the issue raised by Ms. Vannon, when she and I spoke about this matter, I asked her to show up. She was asking that the city contribute or we individually contribute to a tent which she would use then for the fundraiser. I mentioned to Deborah, she felt it was a council decision whether we're going to support this. And I don't know whether it's something we want to be supporting or not as a city, or we want to do it individually. So I just want to kind of get feedback from council on that idea.
I think it's a great thing for us all to do individually.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought, but I wanted to check. And so I'll have her check, and I'll see if I can get an information what she needs, and through Deborah, we'll get an email out to all you as to what's there. And I tend to agree personally that I'd be individual. So, okay. Last issue I want to raise is I'm unhappy with the lack of our, as Ms. Kane mentioned it, the lack of our, the inability to hear things. I missed the last meeting because I was lucky enough to be on vacation, floating the Salmon River, enjoyed that a lot. But I did watch the meeting on video, and I agree, if you're watching this remotely, and I have a loud voice normally, so when they tell me to speak up, I really understand how bad it is. And when you watch this, it's really hard to hear what goes on. And I want the public to know that our staff is working very hard to get our electronic system upgraded. We're being put off by the lack of ability to get products, is my understanding. So we're working that as fast as we can. Having said that, we used to have a board up here. We voted. We had to push one of the buttons here. We'd vote yes or no. That's gone away. And my view is we ought to go back to some kind of a contemporaneous voting system. I asked Ryan to put together, and he's handed out to all of us little slips of paper. And my suggestion is that we, anytime there's going to be a roll call vote, that we have our name on it, we put yes or no for that issue, we hand it to Ryan, he announces those votes. I did talk to Mr. Hanlon about this. Our code has got a weird provision in it, and Mr. Hanlon, I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, thought that would comply with our code. I think it allows us to have contemporaneous voting, so we're not watching what the other people are doing in front of us and trying to vote based on that. So I'm going to ask that, in fact, I'm going to move that we do a paper ballot until we get an electronic system running for roll call votes. That was a motion. There's no second.
I heard it.
Okay. All right, no second. I'll live with it.
All right, motion dies for lack of a second. Sorry for the work you did. Those are nice.
Don't wait.
Thank you.
No, thank you for doing it.
Yeah, no.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there anything else? Other council comments?
I've got it. The Roaring Fork Mountain Bike Association has requested that they be allowed to present on an agenda to council of some future project. Paula Stepp has requested that be brought to council, and I agree with that request. I sat on council the first time the Roaring Fork Mountain Bike Association brought their first project to town, and to my knowledge, it's never been a FAB request. As a nonprofit, it's always come before council, and I think they should be allowed that opportunity again. So I'd like an amen from somebody else to support that.
You want to do a quick hand vote?
No, I think there's two people. And I think we had talked, I think I'd at least mentioned to Paula that maybe the first meeting in November would work better, since the next meeting might be full.
Great.
Maybe.
Anything?
Sure. I've got one item.
I just have recently, and I know the rest of council has received some feedback on the Mountaineer, the Rocky Mountaineer coming into town, the train, just with some noise and light concerns, which we appreciate their visiting. But I wanted to let you all know, for those who have addressed the concerns, that we are kind of getting to the bottom of it and figuring a few things out. So if everyone can just be patient, we'll probably have an update on that and very soon.
Anybody else?
No.
Okay.
Can I make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to approve with the absence of that one item, the consent agenda?
That'd be great.
I will make that motion with the exception of ads.
I'll second.
Moved by Tony, seconded by Shelley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I'll just say one thing real quick. If masks are voluntary in here, but CDC does recommend them in all indoor settings, so if you feel so inclined, we encourage it strongly. Okay, item number 11, consideration of annexation, the initial zoning rezoning of 15.81 acres of commercial CO district and planned unit development. Councilor Wilman.
Actually, if I could, just to orient everybody in the audience to where we're at. We, 2 meetings ago, you had a motion on the table to deny this application. You then moved to continue the motion to deny to tonight's meeting. After that, I think the council discovered that Paula was not going to be here. So you're working with 6 people. Tonight, with regard to your first action, you need to address that motion, whether that is, Charlie withdrawing and Ingrid is the second allowing that, whether that is a vote on that motion, whether that is Ingrid withdrawing her second. Some action needs to happen on that motion first before you move forward with anything else on this application.
Councilor Wilman.
Having said that, and having had that conversation with Mr. Hanlon before this meeting, I think it's important that all 7 of us are here to vote on this very significant project within the city of Glenwood Springs. And because procedurally I need to withdraw the motion to have that happen, I'm going to ask in a moment that Ingrid, I will withdraw a motion, I will withdraw a second. And the reason is I'm immediately file that with a motion to continue our consideration of this to the 21st. I hate to do it because I know the developer and the applicant are here, a lot of people are here, but I think we need 7 of us. This is probably the biggest single development approval that we're going to face, at least in my first 4 years, and if I choose to or get elected to run a second 4, that I'm going to do in the 8 years I can serve. And I think we need all 7 of us to weigh in on that. So I'm going to withdraw my motion to deny because I have to do it procedurally.
And I too will withdraw mine in first for the same rationale, is that I feel like for the integrity of the vote and how big and pivotal this decision is, I want a full council.
With that, Mr. Mayor, I would move to continue this matter until October 21st. It will be the first item on that agenda. I do apologize to the applicant and to the others. I think we should have been made clear that everybody could be here when we set this, and I do apologize. And I know you have done some work in between. I've looked at that, and I appreciate yours. But I feel that's the better thing to do. So motion to
Second the motion.
Could I just make one friendly amendment that it's continue till October 21st or until such time a full council is present? Because if one of us falls ill, I don't want to fall. I mean,
You have to be to a date certain.
Yeah.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
If
fine.
I'm ill, though, we can confirm the next time.
Right. I mean,
May I ask a quick question too, and that is that the application had some amendments, and we will see those amendments on the 21st. Will we allow public comment at that time, or has public comment closed?
unless council chooses to reopen its public comment has closed, and those revisions are in response to your direction from the dais. So I would leave it to council's discretion and potentially that night, when the full council's there on what they want to do.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion by Charlie, second by Shelley, correct, to continue to October 21st?
Yeah. Call the question.
Call the okay?
Counselor Russo.
Yes.
Counselor Hershey.
Yeah.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilman.
Yes.
Mayor Govis.
Yes.
Counselor Couch.
Yes.
It passes 5-1.
All right. Thank you, everybody that showed up. I'd imagine we'll see many of you in 2 weeks.
Oh, I did. Thank you, Haley. And Chad.
Shelley seconded that, Ike.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Shelley, second.
Probably not, but I don't know.
That's a question.
Mike texted me and just said that
Oh,
he wanted to know who.
Yep.
Hey, guys, can you take the conversation, ma'am? If you could take the conversations out of the room, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, are we gonna call that app thing now?
What?
The app thing, the.
Oh, yes. Yeah, thank you.
I didn't
From
want you to forget
consent.
about it.
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just say, on the, specifically the hockey item, it wasn't responsive because it asked how many kids were specifically with their hockey organization that were Glenwood Springs residents, and they didn't answer that. They said just 200 families. Before I would feel comfortable voting to approve that, and FAB has generally been supportive of this organization, I'd like to know that answer because the other applicant, the swim team, did have pretty reasonable breakouts and so do other ones. So I'd love support if we could instruct Steve Boyd maybe to relay to youth hockey if they could get that breakdown to us by the next meeting. We can either approve the swim team tonight and their funding or just deal with it as one item at the end. I would look for suggestions. Go ahead, Charlie.
With your permission, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the FAB recommendation on the swim team, and as part of that, to continue the consideration of the hockey application and the recommendation until the 21st.
I'll second that.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Shelley. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Steve, are you clear with that? Okay. Next item, budget submittal.
No.
Okay.
Did you say no?
I said no to 5 minutes.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh,
I was
I
just
thought you
waving.
said no to
That was me
budget.
waving.
No, that's what I was like,
No budget.
how about?
This is kind of one time here to really brag, and please bear with me.
Don't we have a smile from ear to ear?
Melissa does not trust me to write my own presentation, and she is correct. We're not getting it up on the computer.
I don't know if that's true.
She's gonna get it on the computer.
I have some opinion.
meeting.
Before I start, I would like to thank Steve, Annette, and all the staff that actually put this budget presentation together.
Are there pictures?
There are pictures, many pictures.
My TV never works.
Okay. I'm submitting the 2022 budget to you guys today, but before we get to that part, we're going to go over all the wonderful stuff that 2021 had in store for us. Okay, so we all know there was a Grizzly Creek fire in 2020, and so we did just a couple of things to prepare for it. We were worried there could be mudslides in the canyon and rock slides at our intakes. So we spent about $4 million to try to make sure even when our water looked like this, we could process it. So this is what our no-name tunnel looked like before, and this is what it looks like today. We also did really extensive upplants at our water plant. Okay, because we know we need redundancies, we have built a 500,000 gallon water tank at Cardiff that will go online later this month. We've also built a 16,000 gallon Iron Mountain lift station that went online in August. We're pretty confident that while we do need additional improvements in our water and sewer fund. The investments we made this year will be appreciated by our residents for a long time to come. Okay, and electric. Okay, we're building a brand new substation this year. It's our 4th, and we feel like this will be all we need for a while.
Where is that exactly? I'm sorry. Oh,
What's that by the water plant, wastewater plant?
okay, thanks.
We designed a new electric building, which we're hoping it'll be 100% designed this year. We're hoping to start building it next year. Okay, and that building will house broadband. So, as you know, last year we borrowed $9 million to do our broadband project, which will deliver fiber to every home. We're well on our way to offer that broadband service to almost every household in 2021, except for mine. And we have a new spokesperson. I know, we do live close together. Okay, we have a new landfill manager, Liz, which we do not have in jail, but we are very happy she's here. And some things we've done in the landfill this year is we can now accept septic and car wash waste because we constructed new ponds. We built a new landfill compost area that is in very high demand and much higher quality than it was before. We opened a recycling center to much fanfare. Okay, fleet, we are building a wash bay, which I know is very exciting. We'll be able to wash even the big fire trucks in it. Streets, we were pretty busy this year in streets as well. This is a picture of Blake Avenue from Walmart to Highway 82, and the improvements include the replacement of a water line, storm sewer, concrete pads, and a pavement rebuild. Most of this work was done in-house. We are currently working on Red Mountain South. The first phase of it includes water line, storm sewer, roadway, and side rebuilds to be completed this month, assuming if we can get all the concrete we need. Okay, and of course, we have been working on Southbridge. We intend to be 100% designed by the end of 2021, and now we just need some help with funding or lots of help with funding. I think I skipped South Midland. If I skip South Midland, you guys are all aware that we are doing a very large project on South Midland that will be completed next year.
Ish.
I always like to say ish. Okay, we bought a new bus in the bus fund with grant funds. Community development is planning and also economic development, and had a pretty busy year as well. We issued 379 building permits so far this year, 100 more than this time last year, which was not a quiet year either. We continue to process land use applications and continue our historic preservation. We are very proud of the legwork and then your eventual approval of an inclusionary zoning ordinance for affordable housing. Okay. We are also very proud of our Governor's Award for Downtown Excellence for our Partners in Pandemic Award. This was our COVID response working with the Chamber, the DDA, and other businesses and community partners on our response for COVID. We'll miss the little igloos this year. And then, of course, the river is very important to community development. The River Commission sits in there. So this year we did publish planting guides, riparian planting guides. We hosted Riverfest, and we started our comprehensive plan updates, and we assisted community development assisted with South Canyon planning that is currently ongoing. Okay, Parks and Rec. We are continuing to make improvements to our parks. This year we should finish up phase 1 of Sayre. We added a sun area, a shade structure at the archery range, which I did not even realize we did, but thank you. Okay, we started, and we're very happy about this, we started extensive outreach to our Latino community in our Parks and Rec department, and also for the whole city with the hiring of Brianna, and then also in Parks and Rec. We have a new employee that is completely dedicated to outreach. And then we started this gear library. This gear library is so people can afford to participate in all of our wonderful outdoor activities, no matter what their income range are. So you can rent gear. Okay, and we have a lot of programs that we're just getting up and running again, truly, after COVID. You'll remember Parks and Rec took the brunt of both our staffing cuts, and then they got about 40% increase in usage. So, you know, it's been a hard couple of years. But we're bringing our instructors back, and we're very happy to have them. These are kind of all the recreation programs we're starting back up again. And we missed everybody in all of these pictures. And Steve put in dad jokes for me throughout this entire presentation. So indoor, outdoor, and then also we've especially missed our kids. Okay, the pool, you guys gave us a huge help with this. It was a huge struggle this year to keep the pool open. We still have full-time staff who are not supposed to be lifeguarding, but we did manage to maintain keeping the pool open. You did allow us to hire 2 new full-time lifeguards, which I believe was very helpful. In addition, we fixed a hot tub and installed an acid right system. The community center was also used for unusual things this year. We did a fairly large vaccine clinic for our Latino population, and then also we used it as an evacuation center when people got stuck in the canyon during the debris flows. We also did, not a picture, but we also did an extensive volunteering at the hospital for vaccine clinics this year as well, and thank you all for helping me with that. Very proud of our police department as always. We've started an annual awards ceremony, which we are very proud of. We've been increasing public outreach under Chief Darris. This photo was taken at a Coffee with a Cop event. And then Chief Darris is really leading the way on the Western Slope and really in many departments for non-lethal techniques to detain suspects. This is a picture of Chief Darris doing yet another interview on our use of the bullet. Between he and Jonathan, I'm not sure who is doing more interviews at the moment. And then also we reached out to Garfield County when we had an issue downtown, and we did this really community town hall virtually about that with our partners in Garfield County and the judicial system. And our fire department, we are very happy to have our new deputy chief. Congratulations, Doug. I don't know if he knows what he signed up for. And we have a fire department to deal with house fires and car fires that sometimes happen on the highway, and large debris flows that can occasionally happen. I know the debris flow incident was really stressful and horrible for the community. I think it's really good to recognize that at least working with CDOT and together the fire department that we were able to beforehand set up a system where at least traffic in town was not horrendous every time this happened. And we have an airport. We had a very successful aviation expo. And we also have a new airport manager. I'd like to welcome Meredith Fox as well. At the airport, we did some improvements this year. We brought the underground 100 low lead fuel station up to code, streamlined the FBO, and crack sealed the runway. Okay. We are lucky to have the Assistant City Manager of the Year with us on staff. I think she was one of 3, but still, it counts. You know, we had, through COVID and through this year, through the fires, we had a lot of, let's get together and figure out what we should do. This is one example. When the canyon closed, we pull everybody in together to do emergency advertising out west, and then also we're creating a local, shop local campaign, because we just had no idea when we were taking this picture how long the canyon was going to be closed for. We have implemented an asset management system in GIS. We have, we're almost at a state, we're almost to a state-of-the-art ERP system. So we're getting there. And that's kind of what it looks like sometimes, for sure. During all that, we had a clean audit again this year for 2020. We did win the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for our 2019 budget, and we anticipate winning it again. Okay, we have a potential strip mine threat out there, but we are not letting it win, and we do not intend to. We initiated a salary study, and thanks to you guys, we were able to fully implement it because we want to keep all of these wonderful employees. We do not want to give them to the salt. We have a new PIO. Welcome, Bree. We're very happy to have her. She has been doing extensive public engagement in English and in Spanish. I would say we have picked up our game extraordinarily in that field. We have a new city clerk. Welcome, Ryan. And a new deputy city clerk who apparently has trouble shredding. He splits his time between mini court and the clerk's office, so he's in both departments. Okay. And of course, city council. Welcome, Ingrid.
Felt like, yeah.
Yeah, we've all spent many late nights together, but you guys have really been leading the way for Colorado and in many instances for small towns across the nation. Thank you for all that you have done to help us get where we are. And each step brings us a little bit closer to Southbridge. Okay, your strategic goals, which is what we look at when we start a budget: provide efficient and responsive city government, preserve and improve infrastructure, protect and preserve our quality of life, generate sustainable economic development, and ensure public safety. So our 2022 budget overview: we have a balanced general fund. Our projected sales tax revenue is $21.5 million across all funds, equal to the revised 2021 forecast, so it's up, but it is still conservative. It's up 12.5% from 2019 and 17.9% over 2020. No COLA raises because the salary survey adjustments were implemented early, so they were supposed to be for this year, but we pushed them forward. And no increases in our health insurance premiums from 2021. Okay, available reserves, about $8.4 million in the general fund, about 39%. We would like to get that to 50 because times don't seem to be getting easier. $2.6 million in capital projects and $3.3 million in A&I. We've added, this budget has the 2 lifeguards that you said yes to, 2 parks employees as well from before, a construction inspector housed in engineering, and potentially a neighborhood services specialist that we want to talk to you more about before we hire that position. The 2022 budget meets all FAB recommendations. Okay, and some projects we're doing under your goals is investment in staff retention with salary study implementation. Professional development has been reinstated in all department budgets. $350,000 is going to our ERP implementation. Our next phase is utility billing. $330 money for switch upgrades and PC replacement cycles, and improvements to streets and SWAT's facilities and equipment. Under preserve and improve infrastructure, just under $7 million in street improvements. This includes 6th Street, South Midland, 27th Street, and Grand Underpasses in partnership with RASTA, Red Mountain South, the Devereaux Bridge deck repairs we're looking at, and Blake Avenue from 23rd to 26th. This does not include money for right-of-way for Southbridge that we discussed earlier today. Okay, we're doing just over $2 million in trail improvements with the Devereaux Trail Extension, 6th Street bike path rebuilding. We're designing that, the Lover Trail, the Meet Me in the Middle project, and we're fixing a retaining wall in Rio Grande that RASTA reimburses for. We're doing a lot of infrastructure. Just over $6 million in our electric system for our building, our substation, Mitchell Creek reclosers, $850,000 in broadband for a bucket truck construction contract and network equipment.
and over $5 million in water system improvements, which a large portion of is our Roaring Fork Pump Station, which is the the pipeline we need. And then almost $1 million in wastewater system improvements. Okay, for protecting and preserving our quality of life, we are resurfacing our tennis courts. We're doing improvements at 3 Mile Excel and 2 Rivers Park, Arts Center and Community Center improvements, 9th Street parking garage repairs. We've started our comprehensive plan, and we're making a contribution to a detox facility, hopefully. Okay, generate sustainable economic development. We're continuing our USDA microloans. We're continuing our collaboration with the DDA and Chamber on retail gaps. We're continuing broadband service expansion. We're working on our URA with West Glenwood Mall. And we're putting out the RFQ for affordable housing and also creating an ad hoc housing committee. And what we do when we do this is like actually go through the plan and see what projects we're doing that are in your high and medium low priorities in the strategic vision. So also 6th Street and Laurel improvements. Public safety, we're working on 3 access line breaks with our partners to make sure people can evacuate from West Glenwood. We're replacing a fire engine, we're making improvements to our fire station, we're increasing reserves for the West Glenwood station replacement. We are getting another police dog, and we're continuing our training in firearms safety and training equipment and replacing 3 police cruisers, and this budget does include ongoing downtown security. Okay, your schedule is public hearing October 21st, council adoption on November 4th, and appropriation vote on December 2nd. Questions?
For the credit.
Okay, it's submitted.
Can we get a copy of that presentation?
Yes.
Emailed to us, please? And one other question on the evacuation planning. Is there any way we could get kind of an overview or summary of where we're at with that before the next annexation hearing on the 21st?
I mean, I think yes, I think the summary is we're having more conversations.
I think it would be helpful just to have a visual, a little bit of progress on that.
Would you like Terry to answer that question, or would you just like a written response?
It's up to you guys.
We can do, why don't we do it written?
Written.
Okay.
We are meeting with you soon.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I think that would be helpful to the conversation of overall where we're at.
Mr. Mayor, just one thing.
Sure, this is the time.
Thanks.
I would like to give a round of applause to staff for the great job this year.
Yeah. Pretty incredible. That's why we would need a copy of that.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can do it.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Counselor Davis.
You know, I think we ought to readdress downtown security at some point. I think we're right now at 7 days a week. Still.
Should we go to 8?
And we're going into, well, we're going into a slow time of the year, you know, and I think it's important for Friday, you know, afternoon, Friday night, Saturday night kind of thing, but I just don't know that we really have the need. And I would refer to Chief Darris, he knows more about it than I do, but just my observation is that there just isn't a lot of activity midweek down there that would probably require that to the extent that we have until we get back into the next tourist season, you know.
When would you guys, I mean, I think we're perfectly fine scaling it back. It's gotten pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Like, maybe council could give me an idea of when they think it needs to be scaled back up again.
Christmas,
Oh, yeah.
Well, do we think it needs to be scaled at Christmas?
well, holiday time. Certainly,
Can you give me kind of an idea of
or you think this
what
spring?
times a day and how, like, what?
I think they come around early afternoon and they stay until about, yeah. I think it's about
And I think that's important for
$20,000.
Friday and Saturday.
Deborah, is there going to be a New Year's thing again?
That's a different issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's wrap this one up first.
No, because of security. It's not a different issue.
Oh, I see, okay.
We can certainly wrap it down and then start it back up in I mean, still have it for the weekend and then bring it back kind of December is when I think we.
You know, it's a dynamic world we live
After
in,
Thanksgiving.
so if we see the need to ramp it back up, rather than sit here and trying to guess when that would be, I would say we just bring it back up. I'll certainly bring it back up. When I observe that it's, you know, an issue that I can't personally handle down there,
Deborah, is that contract is fitted up like, so like that?
personally.
Is that through the police department or you?
I think the police department manages it.
It's something we could, as soon as Monday. Is it that flexible? Okay, I got thumbs up.
That's pretty flexible.
Probably.
So it's a matter of an email or a phone call, they're pretty responsive anytime you have anything going on. So
We're under no contract.
no, it's absolutely.
Day to day,
Yeah.
So let's say Friday, Saturday, what about Sunday? Does anybody just want to do the full 3 days?
I think Friday and Saturday night are those times when it's more volatile down there. And I don't see an issue, you know, it gets pretty busy early in the day on Sunday, but then kind of everything dwindles out pretty early in the evening. So, I've got, you know, I keep a pretty close eye on that bridge area.
We know you do, Counselor Downtown.
Would you like a formal motion and vote, Deborah?
Sure.
Steve, do you have a?
Yes.
Okay, so I think the motion by Counselor Davis was to continue the current level of service Friday and Saturday nights until such time we re-examine it. Did I get that?
Yeah, I think so.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Counselor Davis, seconded by Counselor Wusso. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Steve, I've been waiting for a time where we do the.
Any opposed?
Throughout the idea.
Motion carries unanimously.
I love that.
All right,
And thank you to Citadel too, Chief.
yeah.
They've done a really good job down there.
Yeah, we'll make sure that those comments.
Thank you.
Anything else concerning item number 12, budget submittal?
One thing Steve brought up that I would like to address now is that if we do a fireworks display, for
Did I
the,
bring that up?
you did to me.
Months
not-
ago.
Months ago, that we do it later in the evening. And,
Early.
or I'm sorry, early in the evening, yeah, early and not later, earlier in the evening. Go ahead and maybe express.
Well, we're not, you know, sitting up here trying to design your special events. However, as a downtown retailer, I would appreciate bringing people downtown while retail stores are actually open and still active. It's dark on New Year's at 6 o'clock at night. It makes no sense to wait till 10 o'clock at night to shoot fireworks after all the stores are closed. Why not help support downtown a little bit with restaurants and retail and have fireworks at 7 o'clock and while we're all still open?
And we'll, of course, do whatever council would like to do with that. The idea behind it was for residents. But whatever council would like us to do, I'm totally fine with that. Okay.
So do I need to make a motion?
Yes, okay.
Okay. So I would move that we try to ratchet that back to like 7 o'clock instead of, I think it was at 10 o'clock at night,
Yeah, I think it was.
while most residents are in bed asleep,
Because you
right?
got New York City,
Well,
right.
most residents over a certain age or.
Yeah, like, oh, I would appreciate, downtown retail and restaurants would appreciate it if we would ratchet that back to 7 o'clock instead of 10 o'clock at night, so moved.
That is New Year's somewhere, right?
Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you.
It's been moved by Steve, seconded by myself. All those in favor? Oh, sorry.
What about 9 o'clock?
Well, everybody's gone.
Consider a 9.
You know, downtown is active in that every store is closed, every store and restaurant is closed at 9 o'clock.
But if they're in there working and still having the retail, it
Well, you
seems
can
like
vote no.
9, you can still go outside and watch it.
There's a motion on the table, and if that motion fails, I think we could entertain a second motion. Counselor Willman, do you have a comment on this motion?
Yeah, I am. And, Steve, I'm thinking this is New Year's Eve we're talking about, right?
Right.
How many retail stores are open on New Year's Eve?
We're open till 8 o'clock.
Downtown's busy at 8:00.
Okay, I know a lot of stores are closed because they're on New Year's Eve. That's what was my question. Okay.
Restaurants.
Hey, Brian?
Brian, do you have something to?
Yeah, I apologize, but just for clarification for staff, it sounds like you would like to do this to promote activation downtown. We haven't yet made a determination whether we're going to go back to a full-scale downtown event with bands and everything like we did in 2019, or if we just do a fireworks show like we did this last year. We've only done one of each. We definitely learned the lesson, though, because we did 2 firework displays, one earlier for families and one later. We learned that Coloradans love to party, but they also like to go to bed on time. So we definitely were planning on doing earlier, whatever, like Deborah said, whatever council's decision on when you would like that to occur, totally fine. But I'd just like some direction on a type of event. Do you want just a fireworks show, which residents can view from anywhere, like they did from their cars last year, or would you like a downtown or a specific location activation in conjunction with that?
I think the question is, do you have the budget to do a downtown, a more elaborate event downtown?
We do have the budget. I don't have the staff yet. We're getting there. We'll be there by the time we get to it. But I do need to order fireworks and get that going probably here in the next couple of weeks. But if we're going to do a larger event, I also need to get some bands booked and some of that other stuff. So would love your feedback on it.
Well, it is a night of celebration, and particularly, probably more so this New Year's Eve than in many years of recent New Year's Eve, because everybody's really celebrating to get beyond this thing, you know. And so if you have the staff and the budget, we would greatly appreciate, you know, an early evening kind of band and followed with a 7 o'clock firework thing while all the restaurants are open, downtown's busy. Not all the retail stores are open, but a lot of them are. And that would make a lot of sense to me. And that would be my motion, and I think I had a second here.
Yeah.
And I'd like to take a vote on that.
Well, and just as a comment, I guess for locals and remembering that 2019 event, it was fun to go downtown and hear bands and, you know, maybe have a bite to eat or something to drink, but we met friends down there. You can hang out on the bridge and watch the fireworks. But I guess my vote would be give time to do that and enjoy the event downtown and meet people and have fireworks, you know, 9 o'clock. I mean, 7 seems early to me. It seems like it's barely dark. Maybe in the winter it's darker, but it would give more time. But that's just.
I'll make a comment as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I'm totally comfortable with like 8 o'clock.
I'm more comfortable if we let like our event planners pick the appropriate time. But I'm kind of open.
Okay.
But I just think I'd like to see the larger event, and it seems like does it end, usually the fireworks is kind of the culmination of the evening, and then people start to head home, and that's why I would push back. But
I'll just speak to the motion. I like 7 o'clock because that allows me to go down, meet some friends for a drink, see some fireworks, and then go out with friends or family for dinner or more. The fireworks aren't the end. The fireworks are kind of the interlude. Because whether it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, or 10 o'clock, the fireworks, if it's 8 o'clock, I probably have already had dinner, and I'm probably going home at 8 o'clock, and my money is going home with me. So that's why I like 7 o'clock.
And my grandkids really like fireworks, but they're not staying out.
you're not staying up till 10.
I'm actually good at that, but I'm.
All right, let's call the question.
All right, Counselor Davis.
Well, let me think.
Yes. Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman. No. Counselor Couch.
No.
Counselor Russo.
Yes.
Counselor Hershey.
Yes.
It passes 4-2.
Thank you.
All right. Any other events that we need to talk about in relation to the budget submittal? You brought it up. You're the one that brought it up.
I didn't bring it up.
I
Oh.
I would have never done that.
7:30.
I didn't want Deborah's scalp.
Next item, item 13, capital needs, airport capital needs and funding.
I did one.
Okay, so I heard a motion on there for a time, and I'm getting that the general consensus is a full event. Okay, we will do that.
I support that, though, I voted against it.
You want? What time did you want?
Gotcha, yeah. we'll do that.
You're right. That's, yeah.
We're on the airport, not public.
Sorry, just sharing the screen so Zoom can see what we're looking at here. To get a request from council just to go over some of the capital needs over at the airport. We had talked about this in a work session, a council session previously. We have quite a few needs at the airport as we've assessed improvements. Tonight, though, we're coming to you to talk specifically about some of the safety needs there. And this is in no particular order listed here, but we have a Jet A tank that is not really in compliance, that needs to be replaced. Ground conditions there, want to remove the go-ahead thorns, do some grading around the apron of the taxiways and the runway, just so there's not that elevation difference if a plane gets a little too close to the edge there. Also help with any plowing and mowing issues. Looking at putting reflectors on the runway just to help with low visibility situations and some lights for the helipad for any evening time operations. Our Unicom was dying. It has since died since the last time we talked about this. So we need to replace that. That is the system that helps us with issuing NOTAMs and giving pilots conditions of the runway. Perimeter fencing, we are doing a wildlife assessment with USDA in early November, and they will give us some recommendations. We'll also kind of include that in master planning for both security and also to mitigate wildlife, both four and two-legged on the runway. And then looking at the icing, that if the Southbridge project goes in and we have the tunnel, just to make sure there's not changes in the coefficient there. So tonight we're coming to you for really just two of the more critical components. Like I mentioned, our Unicom system has died. That replacement, we had gotten an early estimate of about $180,000. We've been able to get that down looking at different systems with a solar system. They'll remove the need for electrical hookups. And the quote that we got is $91,800, which is actually down from when we first put the staff report together. So that's a difference in that amount there. It's about a 2-week lead time to get that in. We're a non-regulated airport, smaller airport, so aircraft do not rely on instrument approaches or necessarily need the Unicom to be able to land, but it allows us to give advisories for if there's an unsafe condition on the runway or anything else as far as conditions of weather that pilots need to be aware of. Right now, we are handling that by handheld radio, which is fine, but we'd like to get that done as soon as possible. So we're asking council to authorize appropriation of $100,000 for that replacement tonight. And then the other critical items that you see that are highlighted here, the apron grading, thorn abatement, some of the ground improvements that I mentioned. The Jet A fuel tank is also in our 2022 budget for replacement. We have currently in cash reserves $196,000. So we would make up that difference with an interfund loan transfer to be paid back to the general fund from the airport reserves. And then we have perimeter fencing. Like I said, we have an early estimate of that in 120, but that's really going to be dependent on what what the USDA gives us as far as a wildlife mitigation plan and what the master plan looked at for security needs around the runway. So you can expect that number to be dialed in a little bit.
Right, that's not in the 2022 budget, just,
No,
just the fuel, and we budgeted also the Unicom, but we're asking to move that up.
yes, right, exactly, yeah. We would like to move that, yeah, the Unicom was originally scheduled for 2022. We knew it had to get replaced. It died, so we'd like to get that done as soon as possible. And then in 2022, we'll replace that Jet A fuel tank that needs to get into compliance. Also, a couple other things that aren't listed here. You know, we have a $90,000 grant from CDOT Aviation that will allow us to take care of some of the taxiway paving and some of those improvements.
Hold on, Brian.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, no worries. So the Jet A right now is, we had a quote from Basco for $215,000 and one from Mascot for $206,000, plus about $75,000 for installation, the hookup, electric, concrete, all that kind of stuff. So it's going to come in right around $300 to do that. We were originally looking at doing that along with a 100 low lead fuel tank with an above ground tank and relocating that to the south of the airport, approximately where we would look at a new FBO, which we had kind of looked at what that footprint looks like with you guys previously with Public Works, taking up kind of that South Hangar footprint there and everything south of there, and then we would utilize north of the maintenance hangar for additional new city-owned hangars and covered tie downs, possibly an FBO in this area, or we might end up putting that over here, perhaps with the purchase of one of the existing hangars, or building one on the east side there. So all in all, total improvements, and keep in mind a lot of these numbers are just, you know, estimates we got with contractors on, just to give council sort of a ballpark. You know, it comes in at about $6.6 million. A lot of that could be handled, you know, over time with CDOT grants and other funding sources, you know, getting community donations and doing some work in-house. But those kind of critical safety needs we want to look at over the next year or so in 2022 is about $550,000. And those might adjust a little as we get actual quotes for some of those things, depending on what we do with the fencing. So our recommendation to council tonight is to appropriate the $100,000 now from our reserves for the replacement of the Unicom, and then to, if council is good with the interfund transfer loan for $200,000 to the airport to take care of that Jet A fuel system, to bring that up to code compliance in 2022. And happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions for Brian? Go ahead, Charlie.
What discussions have been had with? Thank you. What discussions have you had with Air Medical? I always forget the full name of it. Classic Air, thank you, Classic Air, about the possibility of them contributing to any of these costs, or potentially even doing some of this work?
Probably would not apply to like the Unicom or the Jet A, which is really the only things we're looking at doing immediately. You know, some of these other things you see on here for, you know, future projects like FBO and additional hangars and things like that. Classic Air did bring a proposal to the city to build one. They've talked about, you know, maybe even providing FBO space. We have not renewed those conversations with them yet. I think we're still a little ways before we get to that point, as we're still trying to figure out the layout of the south end of the airport. We'd probably do a master plan to kind of guide what that looks like, and at that point we'd have some real serious conversations with Classic Air and a lot of the airport users on you know, what we can do in-house or in partnership.
The Jet A fuel, that is primarily for helicopters, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
I'm curious, so when we discussed this in past, we hadn't had any feedback from the Airport Commission. Have they had a chance to review this and give any feedback?
Yeah, so this list, the other list I showed you here, wasn't really in any order. This list is in order of priority, as guided by the Airport Commission. So this is listed in the order that they like to get things done from, most important to least in their thoughts.
Okay, and then kind of along the same lines as Charlie's question or Councilor Wellman's question, what kind of feedback are we getting from any, like the interest in public-private partnerships for hangars or anything like that? Have they expressed any further interest, any of the regular users out there?
So we haven't gone into a whole lot of discussion about that because we've been trying to figure out where we can get additional land, and we've only had the, Matt and I have only had those discussions fairly recently. Pretty much all the hangars out there are private hangars built with a ground lease on city property. Any additional hangars that we build we'd like to have those as city-owned hangars and then lease those out. It's certainly, we have a lot of developers that are airport users that I'd love to schmooze and try and get some assistance with those, but yeah.
And then one last question. I live in the world of finished real estate, like homes that people are obviously going to move into and carpeted and bathrooms galore. So that price per square foot, I guess I need a little clarification on hangars. Like what would cause a hangar, which to me is kind of a very base level of finish, to be $250 per square foot? Is that something, am I going too far in my questioning? That seems more like a finished single-family home square foot on minimum size. Am I going too far?
Yeah, actually, Mike, he's working on something else, but I'm going to ask Matt to comment on some of the steel buildings that we've done recently on price per square foot for a finished product.
Well, it depends on, and that includes site work, utilities, heating, in some cases, the doors are much more mechanically expensive than most operating doors, and I don't know if I can give you an exact one. We paid 5 years ago, $75 square foot just for the building.
Okay.
The new EOC is basically a metal building. We're expecting to pay into $250 square foot range for that building, but the huge ends of it are just open bays, just like a hangar would be. So probably in that ballpark.
And I'm
site work and concrete as they are right now.
The other thing I would say is that the last estimates when we were working on affordable housing, it's about 400 square foot right now.
And that's why I looked at the FBO and thought 475. I was like, yeah, that's probably realistic. But it was I was just curious, and I just wanted a little further dialogue or reinforcement.
Yeah,
so
we got estimates. If you want a breakdown of how they price that, I can get that for you.
And it could change by the time that we were doing anything too. So thank you, I appreciate that.
I don't know if this question is appropriate now, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for council and the mayor and the city attorney.
Probably not, because I'd like to open this up for
Okay,
comment.
that's what I'm asking. Yeah, I'll wait.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
We'll now open this up for public comment. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Eric Stropman. I live at 175 Deerpark Court, and I want to thank you for allowing me to talk for just a second. The thing that the flying community wants to stress is that the airport has been there since 1937, and it really hasn't cost the citizens of Glenwood anything. It's kind of a self-funding enterprise. And now we're asking for $500,000, up to $4 million for airport improvements, up to $10 million when you start doing the tunnel. And it almost seems like an exercise in college where you went, if you ignore the cost, what is the most fantastic thing you can do? And then you start tearing down and removing things. On some of your budgets, you ask for $500,000 for lighting on an airport that isn't used at night. I know that the CDOT grant that we did, there's $150,000 every couple of years for seal coating the runway. And I've got great news for you. It looks like I get to save you some money because that was part of the grant that CDOT actually will maintain that runway for the next, I think it's 5 or 10 years. You have to check with Greg Rippey on that. But another thing is I might even be part of the problem because I'm one of the huge advocates of getting a better jet fuel system. But what's interesting is we've only had jet fuel at the Glenwood Springs Airport for 2 years, and every bit of that is on donated equipment that didn't cost the city anything. And there's a lot of money, a lot of grants out there, and you are an expert at getting grants and things with like Colorado CDOT Aeronautics. And they've expressed a desire to give Glenwood Springs Airport money, but there's a concern about how long it'll be an airport. Every year, Denver International Airport and the surrounding, like Colorado Springs Airport, does a surplus sale of like fueling farms and everything else. 2 years ago, Ray Airport bought a 6,000-gallon tank for $6,000. A couple years ago, a fuel truck was available from Aspen for $24,000. So although I'm a huge proponent of getting better jet fuel and better things at the airport, I think it can be done in a way that's less taxing on the citizens of Glenwood Springs. So, thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Tony, would you like to?
Oh,
I'm sorry, is there anybody else from the public that would like to comment? Okay, we'll close public comment, bring it back.
well, before we decide this, did I fall asleep and miss a meeting? I thought that we had put this on, over my vote of no, on the ballot in November. Why are we asking for money now before the voters of Glenwood Springs have an opportunity to vote on a ballot question whether or not to approve more money for Glenwood Springs Airport? So I just don't understand.
If I may, Councilor Hershey, I think with regards to the Unicom system, it's just, it's a necessary function of the airport. So I think that's why it was just being asked. The only question tonight is whether or not to authorize the purchase of the Unicom equipment in 2021. It was an update on all the other things. It wasn't a, hey, we authorize the money tonight. It's just on the Unicom system that has gone down.
But tonight is not a $500,000 ask.
No.
But didn't I receive a call, and I was at a wedding on Saturday, from the city manager asking me if that was okay?
You did, and then we found out we could do a workaround for a little bit because it's not winter, so I decided I'd rather bring it to council to make the decision.
Now I understand. Thank you, Mr. Hammond and the Tickler.
So just to clarify, we are not asking for the funding to do the Jet A fuel?
I believe that is in your budget document that you looked at, but the question for 2022, but the question, which obviously if it's budgeted, it doesn't necessarily mean it gets spent. It means that it's authorized to go out there and work on, right?
Okay.
But the question before you tonight, from my perspective, is just the authorization of the $100,000 for the Unicom system so that we can take care of that safety issue.
Okay, but the Jet A fueling system is also a safety issue?
It is, but it's in the 22 budget.
And I guess I would suggest we talk about that as well, because we're in budget season. So, you know, if we approve that, or we don't take affirmative action to, I guess that's the question. If we don't.
Yeah, why don't we do two things? Can we take an action on the Unicom system tonight so that we know that we can move forward on that or not? And then if you guys want to give direction or take a vote on what to do about what's in the airport budget or not as a separate thing, that would be great. But I'd like to get through the first one because it's kind of important.
Sure. And I guess real quick, another question. Brian said that it's not necessary or required for an airport of our size. Is that correct?
So if we were a federally regulated airport, in fact, Aspen is going through this. Our consultant is dealing with this with his flights out there, or an airport that had more traffic, and a busy airport with planes that needed instrument approach or things like that. We would have to close the airport. We would not be able to operate without it. Because we're not federally regulated, we're a smaller airport. We don't have that much traffic. We're able to handle that with handhelds, but that's a little bit of a burden for staff. We don't have a lot of disruption on the runway, but it does happen. Terry's team was doing some survey work
If anybody else.
I didn't have a question, I have a motion. But I'll wait for it. Okay. Well, I mean, my understanding then, Ms. Figueroa, is that from what we talked about is that this Unicom system is urgent, like a car with no headlights driving at night. So.
Especially as winter gets closer, right? Like that is when there could be snow, there could be ice, and a workaround with a handheld is a workaround for a couple of weeks. It's not a permanent solution.
So I would make a motion to, as Mr. Hanlon suggested, just to approve the Unicom system at this time and the money for that immediately. Thank you.
Moved by Tony, seconded by Ingrid. Any further discussion on the motion?
Brian, you said we don't have many landings, or do you have any idea how many per day? Do we ever get any numbers on what we're doing
It averages about 25 flights a day. About
on an average basis?
Landings and takeoffs?
Yeah.
Is that a good touchdowns? I don't know if they do those there or not.
We don't have like a flight school or something like that.
So I guess my comment is I have difficulty until we know whether we're going to keep the airport open or not, spending any money there, including $100,000. That's why I asked a question about Classic Air and whether they, what they might be willing to do in that situation. I think it's a safety issue, and I think we need to make that safety decision. But I would surely like to know whether or not that's going to be a good long-term expenditure, whether we're just going to spend the money and it's not going to be used in the future. And so that's my concern. And I have, even though I understand, Carl, you want to take it separately, I have some real concerns about borrowing money as the budget has from capital projects. We have so many capital needs to fund an airport. So that's a concern I have. So I know it's outside the scope of the motion, but I have trouble voting on this motion because of that issue.
And I'll use the same logic as Charlie, and that is we don't know what the future of the airport is, to actually justify the opposite. And that is that I think that in the fact that it's an airport right now, we've not made the decision to close it. We have a responsibility to maintain it safely for liability purposes. And I feel like whatever the future of it is, right now, in this moment, we need to make sure that our constituents and the people who use this are safe. In which case, I'm completely comfortable spending the money on it. And I feel like this is unfortunately the sad history of the airport, and that is that we're always questioning what the future of it is, even though it was land dedicated to be an airport. And until we make a decision, and not just us, but the community makes a decision, I think we stay the course in keeping it safe and investing in it as needed.
I guess I'm confused somewhat by Charlie's several times commenting on Classic Air, because there's actually a lot of airport users there. It's not just Classic Air. And in fact, every airplane that lands there that's a turboprop uses jet fuel. It's not just helicopters.
That's my next question.
And so I'm just trying to clear up some of that confusion, because it's not just a helicopter issue, and it's certainly not just Classic Air.
Do we have any idea, and Mr. Strautman, maybe you could weigh in, do you have an idea of percentage-wise that Jet A fuel goes to helicopters, what percentage of the time?
It's predominantly, probably 80%.
Okay.
Because the problem with these jet engines is they're really expensive to turn on and off. So if you can't be sure that there's jet fuel.
It's okay. It's okay. That's all I needed. That's okay. Yeah. 80% helicopters-ish swag.
That's probably about right.
And, you know, we saw about $50,000 in Jet A versus, 70,000 year to date so far, on our low list. And yeah, it's about 85, maybe a little more than that for classic air teams.
Okay. And I guess I would say, you know, Ingrid, to your point, that, yeah, you're right. We've kind of been paralyzed as a community. And, you know, I think one of the reasons the airport has not ever, up until what the next question that might be before us, ever dipped into the general fund is because there's been a lack of investment by the city, by the users. And I think the guiding light has always been, you know, it's an enterprise fund on both sides. And I think that has created a situation where now we have potentially dangerous, unsafe, lack of security, and a less operating airport than I think any of us would like. I think, Councilor Russo, that you're right. I think the community has a great opportunity in 3 weeks to weigh in on the future of the airport. So for that reason, I think if this Unicom system has been dead for 3 weeks and be dead for 3 weeks more, it's not a requirement to have. And so that's why I probably won't support it, because I think the community is going to tell us loud and clear in 3 weeks if we should be investing city dollars into the airport. So with that, let's call the question. Ryan?
All right. Motion by Councilor Hershey, second by Councilor Russo. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Hershey. Yes. Councilor Russo.
Yes.
Mayor Godes.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyman.
No.
Councilor Davis.
Got him right there.
Remember what I suggested?
I'm going to say yes. And I just want to back that up by saying that, you know, this is not a disposable item, this Unicom system. If you have a brand new Unicom system and you close that airport at whenever point, it still has a value. You're going to sell it just like you do the other assets out there, so.
It passes 4-2.
Thank you.
Okay, let's take this.
Not right
No, not until 8 o'clock.
I'm just asking.
The second item is approval of, I believe we're asking approval of the $300,000 for the 2022 budget.
I don't know if we were really asking for that. I think if it's something council does not want us to do, maybe tell us at the next budget discussion.
And can you give us a date on that?
October 27th, next week?
21st.
21st.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
Or not a question. And this is where I completely agree with Mayor Godes. I think this is a different kind of expense, and we do really need to wait to see how the voters weigh in. Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking too. If I could make a motion to continue to our first regularly scheduled, or maybe even second.
Oh, that's right.
Make a motion. I mean, that's why we're trying to proceed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion on the table.
Okay. Do we need a motion?
I don't think you need a motion necessarily, but I do think we won't be able to certify election results until you won't know that until after the first meeting, so the second meeting in November would be appropriate.
At the
How does everybody feel about pushing this item discussion on to the next?
18th, sorry. Oh, the 25th is Thanksgiving.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, I've looked at the budget and I didn't recognize that this is in here, but I can't support approving a budget with $300,000 for Jet A fuel system until, well, I just can't support it. I'm going to be just flat honest. This is an enterprise fund, and Mr. Stroudman, I respect your view, but since 1937, I think you said it started, it's been self-funded. Well, it's been self-funded for the same reason what the mayor said. Nobody planned ahead, so now suddenly we're looking at least that kind of an expenditure. And maybe we can get it cheaper. I like the idea that looking for cheaper ways of doing that and doing it, but I can't support an enterprise fund by taking money out of capital projects, which is what the budget currently calls for. I can't support that. If this was an enterprise fund, it's like the water or the sewer or the electric, which most citizens benefit from, it'd be one thing, but this is a enterprise fund that
a limited number of citizens benefit from. And I can't vote in good conscience to have the general public pay for that type of operation. So I'm going to ask that to be taken out of the 300,000 be taken out of the budget is for the Jet A, and that transfer be taken out from the capital fund. I guess I'll leave it at that. I'll ask and we'll see where it goes.
Okay. And I would agree with that at this point, but I think also we do have a ballot issue that will be coming forth in the November election. And I think part of asking that question is we have potentially, as is shown in Brian's presentation, and even more so if we look at the Southbridge Tunnel, we have some large expenditures coming forward. And the airport has operated on a fairly small budget for many, many years, kind of independently of a lot of strict oversight from the city. They've operated quite independently of the airport board and an enterprise fund. But contrary to how the enterprise funds for water and electric and those larger enterprises work, all the users pay fees. We all pay a water bill, we all pay an electric bill, and that covers administrative costs, that covers other things that keep those funds running. The airport has never really had that, and now we're in a situation where we have deferred maintenance and safety issues that have built up out there, basically because, it's not 1937 anymore. It's 2021, and we can't operate under kind of a very loose operation that's right on the south end of the city and on city property. It's a liability for the city to have that operating and to have safety issues out there that are a liability to the city. So when I was running for re-election, I heard from a lot of people that they support the airport. They like the small town airport. They like the idea of an airport on the south end of town. But when you look at costs, coming up against $6 million for that kind of safety issues and deferred maintenance, and then you look at the cost of $4 to $5 million for the tunnel to get Southbridge built, which is a very important safety issue for the city. Those are large costs that I think it's important that we have an issue out there asking our citizens, where does that money come from and how do we pay for that to cover those costs to keep the airport open? And so I'm okay taking that off, or at least holding off on that conversation on whether or not that goes in the 2022 budget, because we need to hear from our citizens and how we move forward on this. And if that answer is yes, go forward, then we'll figure out how to pay for that stuff. And maybe we can talk to Classic Air Medical, or maybe we can look at other ways to get that pricing down. But at this point, I think it's important that we hear on that ballot question to move forward.
And really, I just want to counter Charlie's observation that why would we keep an amenity within the community that only a few users, like constituents use, and just say that, that's not the great equalizer. Many people are paying taxes to keep the community center open who never step foot in the community center. There are people who use quite a few different amenities that we have throughout the community that, they don't even live in 81601, which may be the case with the airport as well. But ultimately, like many things, I think it shouldn't come down to our decision as 7 people, but rather it should be the community. I also feel like, to Eric Strotman's point, that budget that was created that had, a courtesy vehicle and campgrounds, it was overinflated. And I feel like we very much owe it to our community to have real-time numbers. And we need to ask them, if you want this, be realistic about if you want this, it will come at a cost, just like I pay to keep the community center open. But we need to have that, and everything needs to be very transparently open and understand what it entails to keep it open in order to keep it safe, and what potentials, use of that land would be if indeed there's just not the money to keep it open.
I think the question of use and that's an important question. Brian, do we have numbers? I think at one time we had numbers on number of citizens who had hangars or tie downs out there. Do we have any idea what are those updated at all?
Yeah, so we,
I'm going to go back to this slide here, kind of some quick facts about it. So, like I said, we have about 25 flights per day. We have about anywhere between 8 and 12 long-term tie downs, approximately 60 based aircraft at the airport, about 36 on-property hangars. We did find a report. It's an older report, so these numbers aren't necessarily accurate, but give you kind of an idea. They were looking at about 40 of those users that lived in city, about 13 that were in Garfield County. And then, kind of how I mentioned, we do about 150,000 fuel cells every year.
Okay, that helps. And I think just for the purpose of, I don't know, Charlie, if you had a motion or just a recommendation, but I think it was it a motion?
We will leave it in the budget as presented unless you guys tell us not to. That doesn't mean like we'll go spend the money on December 1st, we won't. But I mean, if you actively want us to remove it from the budget, you have to tell us.
That would remove it from the budget.
I thought I had asked that we have this discussion at the second meeting in November.
That we wait.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with that.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I think I made a motion. to
Did you
move
get a
this.
second?
Okay, so, there we go. Tony.
Oh, hold on. Charlie has made a motion. We need a second on Charlie's motion first. I think you asked for agreement. I think there was general agreement.
Carl said he didn't actually need a motion to move it.
yeah, unless, I mean, it's become clear that you probably do at this point, like, if, I didn't think you did, because I thought. Remind me to always ask you for a motion.
Wait, hold on a second, and I don't have any problem with you making first motion. When do we have to do the final approval of the budget? Isn't that the first meeting in November?
I just said it in my presentation, but I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Yes.
Second meeting. But this kid's still waiting. It's not like you're spending your money.
Right, exactly. That's.
You're still waiting for it.
I agree to wait, but I can't support the budget that this is in there.
And you can revise your budget any time of the year you want to.
And I agree. I will second Charlie's motion because I just don't support having a budget that would lend money and support an enterprise fund. So that's why I will second that. Ryan, let's call the question.
I didn't hear the motion.
The motion was that we do not include the $300,000 in 2022's budget as it currently is.
And the transfer of the capital projects.
Yeah.
All right. Counselor Hershey.
No.
Counselor Davis.
No.
Counselor Russo.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman.
Yes.
Counselor Cow.
No.
Mayor Groves. Motion fails, 4-2.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we move this discussion to the second regularly scheduled meeting in November.
Second.
So just for clarity, so right now, if this passes, then this 300,000 would go into the budget that we will pass.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll re-examine it the second meeting.
And maybe take it out.
With the full council.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Is everybody gonna be there? Does everybody know they're gonna be?
Thanksgiving. I'll be.
Okay.
If there's turkey, forget
Been moved by Councilor Russo, seconded by Councilor Hershey. Ryan, let's call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman.
No.
Counselor Russo.
Yes.
Mayor Groves.
Yes.
Counselor Cow.
Yes.
Counselor Hershey.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
It passes 5-1.
Okay.
Is that all the airport stuff, Mr. Mayor? Sorry. Oh, there it is. Yeah, got it.
Is that all the airport stuff?
Yeah, that's 13 is done, right? Right? Yep. Brian, your next thing would be 14.
Yeah, which is yours too.
All right, thank you.
So, the Art and Culture Board was,
Excuse me, I'm gonna ask you, but I appreciate 5 minute restroom break, leaving.
Yeah, that's going to be more than 15 minutes. Next item.
Right.
Airport,
Airport
art, master.
Art, you can get so upset about art, I hope.
Can you combine art at the airport? That'd be
Totally.
And then if you can
Get it.
Fly this right by us.
We get
Oh.
very excited about art though.
Don't get nervous and crash.
Let's land that already.
That'll stretch.
Yeah. Art.
My name's Stephanie Davis, and I'm the chairman of the Art and Culture Board. And maybe I know, I'm forgetting everything because I was listening so intently to what you were saying. And Brian thinks you might be sick of him, which I can't imagine, but I'm just not afraid to talk, not afraid to show myself. We're very excited about this presentation. I don't want to talk too long because we have our guest here making the presentation. I'm the only one who's been on the Arts and Culture Board since its inception in like December of 2017. So at that time, we noticed, one of us was on the charrette for the Tubing the Colorado, and noticed that it would be nice to have, our first focus was just, hi, what do we do? The possibilities are endless. But the charrettes and the idea with the marble sculpture showed us that we need would like to have a comprehensive sort of a public art policy. How do you acquire it? Who's involved? How do you decide what is reflective of Glenwood, which is a big question, but I mean, people talk about that. And then how do you put out a call to artists, since you're a public institution that's fair and inclusive? So that was our impetus for sort of saying, let's get a consultant to help us with this. This, for being a new council, this is a good way to take stock of what you already have and sort of form a foundation for how you move forward if you were to acquire art. I say if, because it doesn't mean you just turn around and go buy some big thing for $1 million, but you already have several beautiful pieces in place. You want to bring that forward as something that this residents instills them with pride and inspiration. It appeals to tourists, even what we already have, make a walking tour of what we have. And when you go forward with a blueprint like this, you're able to say no to, this is like the practical artist in me because I have a museum background, but you have this person, magnanimous person, wanting to donate something to you, and it's god awful and it costs $30,000. You have a policy, I don't want to say to reject it, but you have a context for, do we need another mural? Do we need another bronze sculpture? Does this cost more to maintain? Does this free gift cost money to us over the long term? So it helps with things like that, acquiring. Or the other side of the coin, there's a beautiful term called the accession. If you want to get rid of something, you don't just get rid of it overnight. And someone's like, what happened to that beaver? I love that beaver. I love that Charlie Brown. I like these flower things. So you have a nice, smooth sort of museum-like policies for the comings and goings of your collection, what I would call your collection. So Josh up here is from Ohio, designing local. He has really deep experience with art, but more importantly with municipalities and regions. So I'm gonna let him take it away. And of course, Shelley's our liaison. Thank you for all your support.
And do we have other arts and culture?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, Ethan Merritt, also on our committee too. So take it away.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here tonight. I don't know why the crowd didn't stick around for the best part of the night.
Right.
This presentation. So I do want to just give you a little background on me. I didn't think about this because we've been working together for a year and a half now prior to COVID. But our firm, Designing Local, we concentrate on cultural planning. We also do historic preservation work and urban planning and design. But really, public art and cultural planning are the core of what we do as a firm. And we're really all about finding the character of the community, helping to express that character through placemaking, public art, and ultimately economic development, and creating fun, exciting places that people want to spend time in. Our work is really all over the country. So this is our first and only project so far in Colorado, and it's been a pleasure to get to know Glenwood Springs and all the fun people that have been involved in this project over the past few years. But, we're able to bring our lens of this national experience into communities, and also, learn things from each community and bring it to other communities, best practices. So that's exactly what we've done as part of this planning effort. So I want to talk a little bit about just why public art is important in general. It's really, the first and probably most important thing is creating a better quality of life for residents. And I think, you see that with murals and the sculptures around the community. It's about creating a sense of place and connecting people to that place, and representing the town character, doing those placemaking projects, and then ultimately, again, economic vitality and development as the community goes on into the future. So why did we do the public art master plan? Stephanie already touched on that, but really it was about setting the direction for public art in Glenwood Springs, establishing policies and procedures not just for new pieces, but also the existing collection, which we've been working on getting all the information for all the pieces while I'm here this week. So that has been really good too. So we're going to walk away from this planning process with a really good inventory of what already exists, some ideas of how we need to care for that, and also policies and procedures for how to move forward as we are getting more public art in the future and maintaining what we have. This also guides the city in how to operationalize the public art program. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like in the future. And then also we generated some concepts for public art and placemaking that are really inspirational ideas for how the program could be implemented. And again, as we move forward and assuming that you ultimately adopt this plan, I'm going to continue to work with the Arts and Culture Board and staff to develop a conceptual work plan for what could be implemented and when and what that will cost. That's kind of like the way we're going to book in this planning process. So what does it look like to be establishing the program? So we made some recommendations, and we called them steps because it was sort of like, this is how we're going to make this actually happen. And the first one is enhancing the role of the Arts and Culture Board. We'll talk about that a little bit next. And that goes along with creating an ordinance, which is not before you tonight, but which ultimately will be before you in the future. Also, implementing the public art policies. We'll talk about what those policies are. And then some funding opportunities as well, and how we might approach that. So the Arts and Culture Board has a lot of responsibilities in the ordinance currently, but specific public art responsibilities are not included in that. So in the ordinance that will ultimately be brought before you, the public art or the Arts and Culture Board will have a few more authorities, and it'll really be about reviewing and approving any proposed public art that's on city property or funded by the city. So again, like if somebody's trying to place a piece of public art, they will know where to go. So if if a private group wants to do that, or if there's some kind of grants or other funds from the city going into public art, they will review that as well. They'll also make recommendations to City Council when new public art is being acquired, following the policies and procedures that will be put in place. And they'll advise city staff on, who's going to sit on selection committees. And really, it's just kind of, there'll be a sounding board for how these things are moving forward. You guys are the decision makers ultimately. So they'll always be advising you. But, we're just enhancing what the powers and duties are currently. Also, please stop me as we're going through this if you have questions. And I hope you do. We, again, have broken this up in, tonight you're have a proposed resolution to adopt the public art master plan. And then in the future, an ordinance will come before you, and actually has to come before planning and zoning first as well, because there are some code changes that will do the things we just talked about with the Public Art Advisory Board, potentially adopt funding mechanisms, and also, defining some relationships and between the board and the other things we just talked about. So what are the policies that we're talking about? They live in the appendix to the document that we created, and they're, 60 pages or something like that. Fun reading, I'm sure, for everyone. But really, they lay out the roles and responsibilities of the Arts and Culture Board, of City Council, of city staff. They guide how the city can create a work plan yearly for public art, what public art funds can be used on, what the acquisition policy is, so how the city actually acquires it, through calls for artists and what methods they should use for that. A collection management policy, so how they manage the existing collection. Donation procedures, Stephanie kind of mentioned that. That's a really important one because, a lot of times people they have a nice sculpture that they don't want any longer. Let's bring it to the city and give it to them. Well, maybe we want that, maybe we don't. We have a policy in place, or we will, in order to define how we're going to do that, how to maintain things, and then some mural guidelines too, that give the city some direction on that. What is the funding that we're proposing? What does that look like? We're proposing a couple funding methods, and then also there's some other funding opportunities as well. The two that are specifically in the plan are a % for art and private development. This would apply, basically the standards would be the same as the open space requirement, but would only be applicable to projects that were $50,000 or more. There would be a cap of $100,000, and developers could either contribute to a fund and they would get a 20% reduction, or they could put the artwork on site. And I noticed, like the hotel I'm staying in, they put a piece of public art out in front, and I don't even think there was a requirement. So there you go, people are already doing this. Also a % for art in city capital improvement projects. So this is the most common funding mechanism around the country. It would devote 1% of public art to, from most capital improvement projects, not all, but most, to public art that could either go along with that project, or it could be on a different site, however the city wants to do that. Other funding opportunities, you're already giving some general fund allocations towards public art, or have in the past, so that's something that you could continue to do. Grant funding opportunities, obviously Tubing on the Colorado was already grant funded. There are opportunities for that. And then continued partnerships like the Wings with the DDA. There are all kinds of different partnerships that could help continue to bring public art to the city. So what does it look like to operationalize the program? We really laid out goals and strategies to achieve those goals. I'll just go through these briefly, but again, it's really about connecting people to the identity of the community, celebrating the natural environment, which is striking to me as coming from a very flat place. But I think even people that live here find it to be very beautiful, and it's something they really care deeply about. So we want to reflect that in the public art, connecting to the culture of wellness. We already see lots of public art on bike trails and things like that. So again, how do we continue to enhance that, build upon the history of the community, celebrating the cultural diversity of the community, creating a sense of playfulness and whimsy, and place-based economic development. So some of the things that we're proposing are, again, continuing the partnerships with the DDA and other downtown business owners, exploring applying for a Colorado Creative District designation. This is a very specific program that the state has. Lots of communities have done this, and it's a really good opportunity. Yes? Yeah, I think so, yes. Yeah.
They do.
And I think that opens you up for some grants and things. So it's a good opportunity. If you look in the plan, there's a whole, it tells you all the criteria to become one. Having a plan is one of them, so this will help. Creating a nature-based public art series. So that's, there are lots of people doing things in mediums that can just kind of blend in with the physical environment and are using natural material. So that's kind of a fun, low impact thing to do. investing in iconic public art in public spaces. So I think this is a really important one. There's a lot of public art, but even continuing that and putting it in places that are really like vital and right out there in front of folks is important. Utilizing and promoting local artists and working with Visit Glenwood Springs to really promote the arts and culture elements of the city. It is being done somewhat, but I think now that we have this plan, can really focus on that more as part of the tourism aspect of the community. So we also have some big ideas, and these are, the easiest way to show this was to do screenshots of the plan. So I'm not going to read all of these, but I'm just going to give you a sense of, what the possibilities could be over the long term to implement this. Creating something like a mural festival, following along with the concept that a lot of other communities have done, doing a cultural trail of some sort. So you're seeing some here. Indianapolis has a really good cultural trail that combines bike facilities and connects their cultural institutions. Folsom, California has a really fun one that's like a giant Johnny Cash sculpture. So you're seeing these kinds of things pop up around the country, and a really good opportunity to combine that outdoor physical activity with public art. Some mountaintop public art. So, we realize that's probably wouldn't actually be within the city limits, but looking for partnerships there to do something that people can hike up to, or maybe is visible when you hike up and you can see it from, it's below that you could see from above. So something, again, to promote that wellness and connect people with nature. Art at bus stops. I know this was something that was done when the BRT line was rolled out years ago. So again, thinking about something fun, incorporating additional public art into the bus stops, promoting use of the bus stops and beautifying the areas. Art for kids by kids. So there's lots of kids programming that the city is doing, thinking about how we could continue that and get kids more involved with art and public art. Doing poetry in the streets. This is a really fun one. I executed a project like this where we hired poets. We laser cut their poems into something that we could take out in the street and chalk paint or spray paint that would wear off in 6 months. Really cool way to engage a different folks than usually get engaged in this type of project. Creating a local artist database that people could apply to. This would be great as well if the funding mechanism was adopted, because it would allow folks to more easily find the public artists that are in the community. And doing some public artwork on the bridge. It's a great, very busy, pathway. So getting something out there that people could take photographs with or enjoy, a good opportunity. With that, I've talked for a long time, so I'm going to open it up for questions.
Any questions? Any motions? I move that we adopt Resolution 2021-25.
I will second that motion.
All right.
Yes.
Been moved by Shelley, seconded by, yeah, go ahead.
For you, is it gonna cost?
That will, it may, but there are ordinances and follow-up resolutions and things that will go through P&Z to be adopted. So this is the recommendation to adopt the overall plan, but there are follow-ups in the appendix and everything that, the actual details of implementing and how we fund things will be up to P&Z recommendations and then council.
Because Shelley, I love public art, but I also heard from the city manager about preserving our infrastructure and making sure that it's the best. And I think sometimes we get over our skis, as the mayor said, and it's want versus need, or maybe Steve Davis said that. And I'm just concerned that it's not be a priority.
Just real quick, this resolution, from my understanding, does not require capital outlay.
That's why I'm asking.
Okay, yeah. I just want to be, right?
At this point.
Right? Okay, I'm just looking for something.
Right now.
No, okay.
That's what my question is. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
Just kind of responding, Mr. Mayor, I mean, I think it's going to require staff another time to go forward, but I certainly support that. And I just want to congratulate you. I read it, and I have no artistic bent at all, so it's kind of interesting to watch that, see what you guys' ideas, and don't ever ask me to pick out a public art project, so.
I do encourage you all to check out the plan if you have, more thoughts and ideas after you adopt it, of course.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Lemon.
Yes.
Mayor Brothers.
Yes.
Councilor Hershey.
Yes.
Maybe. Councilor Cal.
Yes.
Councilor Russo.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Can I just say, we didn't really get much time for comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we didn't get any time.
We didn't get any time for comment. I'd just like to say that the Arts and Culture Board has worked on this for over a year. A lot of it was during and through COVID. It got delayed. It was pushed to online. If you get a chance, really read through the plan. There's some fantastic ideas in there for engaging art along our trails and throughout the community, and could really be a lot of fun, even events, and bringing people to the community. So I think to Councilor Hershey's question, yes, there might be some costs, and we might want to do some funding through our public projects or private projects, but it could also have a great benefit and have a lot of payback for town and just raise, I think, the fun level in town, which I would love to see, and the creative level. So I really appreciate all the work that this board has done, and it's been fantastic.
Don't take the questions for not.
Oh.
It's well put together. I read it as much as I could have, and I really liked it.
That means we did our job.
6-0 vote. You did a great job.
I'll take it.
I voted yes.
All right, next item, Resolution 2128. Thank you very much. Roaring Fork School District mill levy endorsement. Do we have a presentation on this?
Is this a valid question, Mr. Mayor?
It is on the mill levy override procedures.
Former school board member Carl Hanlon, do you have a presentation prepared for us?
I don't, other than it's council's discretion. Usually on local ballot issues, oftentimes this council has taken a position over the years, and so I leave it in your hands to decide if you wish to.
Would it take the form, Mr. Mayor, a letter, or,
It's a resolution in the packet.
so that would just be public stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I move to approve resolution 21-28, Roaring Fork School District mill levy endorsement.
I second, or my sister would kill me.
All right, any further discussion? Sorry, I shorted this on the last one.
That's okay. I will say one quick thing.
No, always. I just recently, I after looking into this, realized that there are just shy of 50,000 educators in the state of Colorado. I think that's correct. Maybe, anyway, regardless, we have one of 7 finalists for Teacher of the Year in the state of Colorado. And I just feel as though we are so fortunate to have the educators in our community, and this allows them to be paid an equitable wage. So I strongly support it.
Brian, let's go to the question.
Mayor Brothers.
Yes.
Councilor Carroll.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Lemon.
Yes.
Councilor Russo.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Hershey.
On
Unanimous.
All right, very cool. All right, community survey results.
Promote Ryan Weir. Well, I'll just briefly introduce Ryan. He's the Director of Data Analysis and Campaign Strategy for Magellan Strategies, and he's helped us put together this community survey, and I'm going to turn it over to him. And thank you so much, Ryan.
Well, that's it.
Can't hear him.
I hear
No.
I can't hear.
Hi, can you all hear me?
There we go.
And can you see the screen all right?
Yes.
Great. Well, let's thank you for your time tonight, and we're just going to do just a brief overview of the results of the community survey that we conducted last month. The objectives of the survey were just to measure and understand the opinions of residents regarding city services, programs, priorities, and quality of life aspects. And here's just a slide that explains the methodology and how the survey was conducted. We sent a text message to about 3,500 residents of the city of Glenwood Springs. And then the survey link was also shared on the city's website and was promoted by town staff on social media channels, as well as a QR code that was posted at City Hall and at the community center. And this all took place between September 7th and the 22nd. The margin of error for these results is plus or minus 3.15%, and the results are weighted to be representative of the demographics of the adult population of Glenwood Springs. So let's get right into it. The first thing that we do in a community survey is we ask residents directly to please describe the top issues, priorities, or problems that you think the city should be addressing in the next 3 years. And here on the left side, you can see the common themes: affordable housing, traffic, congestion, and road maintenance, population growth, or just the idea that Glenwood Springs is too crowded, homelessness, the building of Southbridge, and then childcare and kids programs. Those are the things that kind of rose to the top of the verbatim responses for these 861 responses that we received. And here's just another way to graphically display that. You really see that affordable housing, traffic and congestion, and street and road repairs are really the three that kind of rose to the top. And really, if you combine the street and road repairs, traffic congestion, parking, if you combined all those into kind of one holistic issue there, that was kind of the top issue. But affordable housing was mentioned by 311 of the 861 respondents. And I should say, I'll save time for questions at the end if you all have them, as I'm going to move through this fairly quickly. Quality of life questions. How would you rate the city of Glenwood Springs on the overall quality of life? A very strong response. 74% said excellent or good, with 22% saying excellent. And you can see on the right side there, I'm not going to get really too much into the different demographic subgroups, but that's just there to show that, yes, we do have those breakouts, and they would be available in the full presentation that you all have as well. And this just shows that we do have also ward breakouts. I won't go into really ward breakouts tonight, but I did include this slide just to show you that Ward 4, for whatever reason, we just did have a higher percentage of Ward 4 who was a little bit less happy with how things are going in the city, where you see 28% said fair and 18% said poor, which really stood out from the other wards. How would you rate Glenwood Springs as a place to live? A similar question, but a little bit different measurement. And again, a very strong measurement. 80% excellent or good, with 29% saying excellent. Here's where Glenwood really shines, obviously. The top measurement was on rating Glenwood Springs as a place for recreation. 84% said either excellent or good, with 53% saying excellent. Strong measurements as well for the availability of paths and walking trails, the ease of walking within the city, and then also Glenwood Springs as a place for dining and restaurant options. Here are the areas that people had the lowest ratings for: traffic flow on major streets, and availability of housing choice. You can see those at the bottom. Those obviously mirror what we saw in the verbatim responses when we asked them for their top issues. But also here, there's some concern about the lack of affordable quality childcare and the lack of affordable quality healthcare as well. Here's a slide where we just compared these quality of life measurements for Glenwood Springs with similar questions that were asked in other community surveys around the state of Colorado. You see these NAs that are in there because not all community surveys ask the same questions, but this still gives us a pretty good comparison, a pretty good benchmark. And what we found was interesting was just how similar the Glenwood Springs results were to to Estes Park. Estes Park was found to be a very comparable community and had similar ratings to Glenwood, for what that's worth. We also asked a battery of questions about resident satisfaction with city services, and this is just one question that we always ask: an overall level of satisfaction with the value that you receive for the taxes paid to the city. 6% are extremely satisfied, but 50% are somewhat satisfied. So that's a pretty good measurement as well, that people are generally satisfied with the value they receive for the taxes paid to the city. And then we also asked satisfaction with specific aspects of city services, fire and emergency medical. Obviously, a lot of satisfaction there. 48% extremely satisfied, 40% somewhat satisfied. Respondents also very satisfied with the park system and the trail system. Police services and crime prevention, again, 24 extremely, 46% somewhat satisfied. And the community center as well had a good measurement. 23% extremely satisfied, 42% somewhat satisfied. Budget priorities. I'm sure you will find this interesting. This is basically where we prompt them and say, the city of Glenwood Springs each year has to make budget decisions. Knowing that from this list, how would you rank the following budget items? And what you can clearly see is that the number one choice from residents was for roadway maintenance, resurfacing, snow plowing, and street sweeping. 28% of residents rated that as their number one choice, followed by emergency preparedness, and then fire and emergency medical services. And then on down the list, residential and commercial permitting, land planning and development, water, wastewater treatment, wastewater and water billing services, and so on. Again, that the top issue clearly was on the roadway maintenance, resurfacing, plowing, and sweeping. We also asked a series of questions regarding residential and commercial development. The first question we asked was for respondents to rate the speed of the development of new housing for sale over the past 5 years. And a plurality of respondents said that yes, they believe it's been too fast. 41% said too fast, including 22% said much too fast. We can contrast that with the development of new apartments over the past 5 years in Glenwood Springs, where an even larger number said too fast, 58% said too fast, and 41% said much too fast. Now, when we asked about retail and commercial growth, the complete opposite answer, where only 14% said too fast, 46% said too slow. So there's a little bit of a tension there between the residential growth and then the retail and commercial growth. We also asked this question, kind of a unique question that not a lot of communities in Colorado would have to ask, but it's an interesting measurement for Glenwood Springs. How do you rate city government's focus on residents versus tourists? What we found is that a majority of respondents said that the city is more focused on tourists than residents. 27% said they had a balanced focus, and 7% of respondents said that the city is more focused on residents versus tourists. And we didn't really get into whether they approve of this or whether they think this is a good thing or a bad thing, but that's the measurement we found on that question. And then we also asked about specific potential redevelopment projects, just to kind of rank these against each other or hold them up against each other. There's strong support for all 5 of these potential redevelopments, but you see there that Safeway with 88% support and the West Glenwood Mall with 82% support, those are the ones that really rose to the top. We also asked a series of police and public safety questions. Just overall, are you satisfied with the performance of the Glenwood Springs Police Department? 28% extremely, 39% somewhat satisfied. That's a strong measurement. And the fire department, even stronger, 56% extremely satisfied, 28% somewhat satisfied. So with that, I'll open up to questions on anything you see there. I can go back to slides if you want, or just take questions about the survey overall.
Hi, it's Tony Hershey. I didn't understand the question on the housing, like the speed of housing. Does that mean that they're dissatisfied with how fast we're building new housing? I didn't even That
Yeah,
question was
yeah.
about.
So the growth of new construction basically is being too fast. That was the idea behind it.
Can you go back to that?
Yeah, new housing for sale. 41% said that yes, it's too fast, and yeah, it's basically talking about the rate of new builds of new construction of housing.
I don't understand that question.
Okay. Something we have absolutely no control over, basically.
Well, I just think that it's tough because they probably didn't understand the question. We haven't had anything.
I don't understand either.
Yeah. Go ahead, Shelley, sorry.
Right. I have a question on the city services satisfaction, I guess.
The value, or
Yeah.
this one.
And maybe it was a budgeting question. Budget priorities, yeah.
Yeah.
Was there any question, considering that affordable housing was ranked as the #1 concern for citizens or the need, was there anything asked in this question about affordable housing?
Yeah, so when we're working with city staff to come up with the list of budget items, affordable housing was not one of them, and they can probably speak to the reason for that, but it wasn't included in the list here as the list of items that we wanted respondents to rank. But you're absolutely right. If something about affordable housing had been included in this list, I fully expect it would have been right up there with roadway maintenance.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Cobb, I just would add that we did ask for a verbatim response for other budget priorities, and we will send out all of the verbatim responses to you. We wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of digest this and have this presentation first.
Right.
There are a lot of responses related to a myriad of issues, but affordable housing being one of them.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? I don't think we're taking public comment on this one. All right. Thank you very much.
I have a comment.
Oh, sure, sorry. We can do comments.
One of the screens you didn't show, but one of the ones I'm looking at is in the report itself is the City of Gilbert Springs taking resident input consideration when making decisions. Did you get any sense of, do we know why that particular result was fairly negative? 56% don't feel we take their views into consideration.
Yeah. I'll just say this. I mean, I didn't include that in tonight's presentation just in the interest of brevity and trying to shorten it. I would say that's, yeah, I can understand, that it looks like a negative measurement, but it's really not all that atypical, in a community survey. Residents don't often, I guess it takes a lot for a resident to feel like that they're really super included in decision making. I mean, what I'm saying is that's a typical measurement. I don't consider that to be an especially negative or bad measurement. I think in communities around the state, you would find something very similar.
Okay, thanks.
I guess to Charlie's point, I think that'd be helpful, is to see like things that come up are like, oh, wow, that looks horrible, or that looks great. Like, I like when you first did the, here's how we compared to like Steamboat and Essex and all those things. Like that's, yeah, something like that. I think that those things are really good. If you've had experience in other similar communities where you ask similar questions, like I'd be very interested to see this presentation if you've done it for Steamboat Springs or Estes Park. Not right now, but you can mail
Sure,
it to us.
Yeah. The thing is that obviously there's multiple companies that do community surveys, and so we don't do the community survey for every single one of these communities. But a lot of times it is public record or public information that we can go find and compare and contrast them against each other. So that's kind of what this slide shows. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I think, and that's something that I can go in and take a look and maybe even add in here, is if they ask similar questions about that citizen input in decision making, and just to see how that question holds up across the board as well.
Go ahead, man. You want a public comment?
Yeah, why isn't there?
Step up. Ethan.
Hi, I'm Ethan. Why is there no questions about walkability included in the survey?
There was, I don't know if it's in the presentation, but there is.
There was one on trails or something.
And
So,
There was also a walkability.
yeah, just
Quality of life.
this presentation is nowhere near the full presentation. There's a lot of slides that aren't included here. So
ease of walking in Violence.
You might take a look on the agenda pack, it's got 62
slides.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you get more results out of it.
Any other comments, questions?
No, I want to thank Brian. I want to thank.
Brian.
What?
Tony wants to thank you.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Jen, thanks for the work on that.
Thank you, Jen.
Great.
And I didn't mention, but the results will go to the folks who are doing our comprehensive plan. So all of those results will available to them as they start their work related.
Great.
Okay, item number 17, public rents.
Is Ms. Wusso going to leave?
I am. I'm going to go outside. Well, I'm just going to sit in the audience.
No, you have to leave.
Go for a walk. See you next week.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm here tonight to present Planning File 2921, and I do have a very brief presentation. As part of an agreement to permanently acquire property for the 8th Street right-of-way, the city agreed to several incentives for the eventual development of 406 West 7th Street. And so I'll just go through this briefly.
Jen, for the public, you read Butler Reds, but it's a church property now.
Yes, so that's the ownership group, but it is and actually, let me get to this slide. So it's right at the corner of 8th and the Roaring Fork River. So the 7th Street Bridge or the 8th Street Bridge, depending on how you count. But when the city was negotiating some right-of-way acquisition for the extension of 8th Street, for the permanent extension of 8th Street, there were some development incentives that were offered to the property owner. That included counting the conveyed property as full satisfaction to the owner's parkland syndication requirements that's associated with residential development on the owner's residual property. So the residual property is this piece that is highlighted in aqua. And I'll show two more slides here in a minute to talk a little bit more about the 8th Street connection. Approval of 2 additional accesses between the residual parcel and the city's riverfront pathway of at least 30 feet in aggregate width, including access that wraps around the northwest corner near the existing church structure, and the balance of the access as mutually agreed to best integrate the residual parcels within the city's riverfront pathway. The city contributing 5 EQR taps for potable water and wastewater upon the date of development, but they must be used within that property within 5 years, and they would run with the title. A waiver of any land use application fees charged within for the future development within that 5-year period, an acknowledgement that the acquisition of the property has the potential to interfere with and or complicate the development of the owner's residual property. Then as such, the city would consider in good faith and deal fairly in accommodating the impacts of the property acquisition and other relevant matters if and when the owner applied for any variance of setback requirements, design, height, parking, and other zoning variants driven by the property acquisition. So this slide right here shows some it's one that's pulled from the area-wide, and it shows kind of where the end of the 8th Street right-of-way stops. And it's kind of this little corner right here that makes that connection for 8th Street, which was acquired by the city. And there's just I know it's a great picture. I also took this from area-wide, but it shows what the eventual 8th Street, the full streetscape with sidewalks and all of and turn lanes and all those sorts of things would look like.
There are projects on there too.
There will be, yes. I didn't put that in here, but just wanted to provide a little bit of context about essentially that there wasn't always a connection, as we remember, of 8th Street, so cutting through the railroad berm, and so this was in service to that. So the property owners are coming up on the end of life for those incentives that were part of the acquisition, and the property owners are seeking to have a 2-year extension of those incentives. Staff members would note that the incentives for this property, were originally intended to be used within 5 years. There's desire for more parkland within the city, and the future impacts to the water and wastewater systems are still necessary. But we are not making a recommendation. We are leaving this to you, so we're deferring to City Council in consideration of a request for a 2-year extension of those incentives from May 31st, 2023 to May 31st, 2025. And with that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Good stuff.
Can you repeat what you said about the parkland?
Yes. And Carl may be able to help me a little bit, but essentially that one of the incentives that's offered is that it would satisfy the parkland dedication that would be required if there were a residential development that was proposed on this Aqua identified residual property within the 5 years.
So we would be extending that for 2 years also.
So there are a few more incentives that I didn't actually mention. One which was, applying for EPA planning area, which, that process is finished. And so I'm not necessarily sure if that one would extend, but it is an extension of all of those incentives for another 2 years. That's what they're requesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just add, Jen and I probably have slightly different opinions on whether to extend this or not, and that's part of why we didn't put a recommendation in. I am concerned about, 5 tap fees and 5 sewer fees is significant, in terms of our water and wastewater system, and we just had significant raise in water rates, those kinds of things. So we're not at the end of 2023 yet. And this was really designed around trying to motivate the redevelopment of that property and help kickstart kind of the redevelopment along 8th Street. And so I think those are just things that we felt like you guys should be thinking about rather than just sort of doing an automatic renewal without considering how it fits into your larger plans, both what we're doing with the utilities, but as well as what you would like to see happen along 8th Street and how quickly.
But just because there's no recommendation, why would we do this?
Why would we do this?
I think that we have been asked for this extension, certainly at your discretion. I think they make an argument that they were impacted with all of their development plans in Glenwood Springs, in Denver. They obviously didn't make the Denver argument to us, but based on the pandemic and then the resulting inability to work with contractors or developers, we have not seen a slowdown, obviously, in community development over that time, but that's the request and the rationale that they've made.
Okay, thank you. Carl, I need to open this for public comment.
I would. I mean, it's a planning file like any other.
Okay. Anybody in public like to comment on this? That's what I get. All right, I'll bring it back to council for further questions and or a motion. Further comments and or a motion. Charlie.
Question. Carl, looking at the letter where they asked for the 2 years, they say that they got this in 2018 due to the pandemic. they don't have enough time because the developers don't tell them it's going to take them a while to do things. Assuming they were actively engaged in trying to get something done, could it be done by 2023 in a normal development cycle?
They certainly could have, and I guess I always took it as if they were in the development process, if there was an active application filed that met the requirements of the agreement. But, you know, I mean, that's, I guess, my interpretation of the agreement we entered into is that it's getting that development approval in place to move forward. Could you have it vertical by 2023? Yeah, I mean, you just saw, you know, Lost 4 just came through. They'll be vertical and done and renting units out in 2023. And I guess I would follow up with that, Charlie. It's more of a concept of, you know, whether you want this agreement to go on indefinitely or not. I mean, it's not indefinitely, but just how you feel about extending out those incentives.
One follow-up question. If we deny this tonight, and they come back and they're in middle or in 2022 and saying, hey, we're moving along, we got this, what we've done,
Yeah, you can always revisit this. Okay. And I guess that's one of those things I would think is really for your consideration is how do you want to try to motivate development? That was at least the idea behind the original agreement, and those goals may have changed for you guys. I don't know.
Does this affect the completion of the 8th Street project?
It does not. We've fully acquired the right-of-way that we need to do that project. So that was part of why this was probably a more extensive deal than we would have normally done for a temporary piece, right? We're trying to address all those things. Yeah.
And we ended up acquiring the pedestrian connection down to the.
We did, and that was part of why we felt it was totally appropriate to waive those park fees at the time. There was that pedestrian connection coming up at that location instead of having to cross underneath and come back up and then cross the street again.
I move to deny consideration for the request of a 2-year extension for incentives for 406 West 7th Street from May 31st, 2023 to May 31st, 2025.
Second.
Been moved by myself, Jonathan, seconded by Steve. Further discussion? Ron, let's call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman.
No, I mean, yes.
That's making the motion.
No to the extension, yes to the motion.
Councilor Cowell.
Yes.
Councilor Hershey.
No, yes, no, yes.
Mayor Gervis.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
It's unanimous one way or the other.
Can someone get Ingrid back?
Ingrid. Hey.
Okay.
I think she was listening.
No, I was eating ice cream in the kitchen.
Item number 18, divestment in fossil fuels. Would anybody like to speak on this?
Good evening, council. Hi. Can I bring you all chocolate?
Could you say your name?
And address.
Will Hodges, coordinator of 350 Roaring Fork, the local chapter of 350 Colorado, working to involve more citizens in advocating at the local and state level for a faster transition off of fossil fuels. I am the scoundrel responsible for the petition before you all, encouraging that, this council to reach out to their investment fund, CSAFE, and request divestment from $24 million in Exxon and Chevron bonds, and to go one step beyond that and to request CSAFE take formal action to actually restrict future investments in fossil fuel interests, coal, oil, and gas companies. I made just a few notes. There's a few things I wanted to say. I'm not a Glenwood resident. I live in Carbondale, but I am the local coordinator representing about 1,000 members throughout the valley, you know, working on initiatives at the local and state level to address the climate crisis. So I do ask your forgiveness in case we like blindsided you with our petition.
That's good.
What was that?
Nothing, go ahead.
I did mean to reach out to all of you sooner. I had begun conversations with my Carbondale mayor and trustees. We're still gathering signatures for our petition, and the date of September 24th kind of came up quickly. That was the anniversary of our successful rally we held in Sophers Park 2 years ago, in conjunction with like Greta Thunberg's worldwide call for more bolder action on the climate crisis. And we wanted to do some kind of event just to offer the public kind of a sign of hope that there was still life left in a climate movement locally after a summer of, you know, pretty alarming weather. So I'm here to thank you all for taking this issue up. I think we all realize it's not a huge sum of money. Glenwood invests about $7.4 million in CSAFE, which holds $24 million in Exxon and Chevron bonds. CSAFE is a $22.7 billion fund shared by over 400 towns, cities, counties, special districts, school districts around the state. And $24 million is about 1% of that fund, which is actually in line with other divestment actions. You know, Harvard University just divested after a long 15-year campaign by students and alumni, and they divested. It was only about 2% of their $40 billion endowment. We succeeded in getting the city of Denver to divest $180 million in Chevron bonds 3 years ago, and that was 1.5% of their investment portfolio. So about 1% is, you know, about ballpark for cities and other institutions divesting their fossil fuel investments. And effectively, what it means is Glenwood Springs is lending about $74,000 to Exxon and Chevron, which are two of the leading companies still committed to extracting vast quantities of oil and gas out of the ground that the world can't afford to burn. Not to mention all the infamous efforts by both companies through lobbying and funding junk science to block any solutions to climate change in Congress, to our great collective insecurity, as we are seeing from record summer temperatures, aridification, longer and worse wildfire seasons, all of the associated impacts from interstate closures to water treatment. The fund manager himself, Glenn Scott at Morgan Stanley, he told me he was inclined not to renew these bonds next year when they mature. Incidentally, most of the fund is bank bonds and other securities issued by LLCs who themselves likely have some ties to the energy sector.
I think we get it.
Okay.
We had the letter that you provided us with, so I think that speaks to it.
Well, thanks for your consideration. You know, we think it's like not consistent with the town's values that it invests in these two companies, and I'm also I'd really like to advocate that Glenwood maybe coordinate with the other four municipalities in the valley on a letter to CSAFE. I think it would be more powerful if 5, you know, Pickett County, Carbondale, Newcastle, Snowmass. So thank you all.
Thank you. Go ahead, Joey.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
You mentioned Harvard University, and I think that's an interesting place to start. I think it was a huge mistake for Harvard to divest from oil companies, because when we divest, what we do is we take away our influence. If you're a stockholder in a company, you have influence on the direction of that company. I think this vote would be really symbolic in any attempt we do. It's such a tiny, tiny percentage. But one percentage I want everyone on this board to be aware of is that these companies, ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, Shell, they make up about 10% of the oil extraction. Most of the oil extraction in the world comes from Aramco, or Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, China, and Iran. So those are government-run oil companies, and that's about 90% of the production. Also, you know, I am concerned as the next person about global warming, but if you look around this room, almost everything you're looking at is a petroleum product. From the paint on the wall, to this computer, to my cell phone, to even clothing and other things you don't even think about, like toothpaste. So, you know, oil is part of our life. I have serious concerns about extraction. Mr. Mayor, you can just look in California what happened with that oil spill. I do not think that is the future, but I just think this is symbolic. It really doesn't do anything. And if we want to have a seat at the table and say, hey, Exxon, don't do this, why would you divest and not be a stockholder? If I'm a stockholder, I can say, or if I'm in a bond market, I can say, hey, let's not do this, let's do that. That's my only concern, and that's why I'm not going to support this. Thank you.
I would just say the reason you divest is the reason you boycott any business that's not, or you don't frequent a business that's not aligned with your values. And I think that oil companies are going to oil, you know, lion's going to hunt. And I don't think that them having $74,000 of our fund is going to make a dent in their mission or vision or have them develop any more renewables versus oil at all. I think you're right. I think it's symbolic. I totally agree. They're not going to stop oiling or anything else because we divest from them. But I think it's what are our values as a council? What are our values as a community? How are we being impacted by burning carbon? And I'd say that this community has been impacted very profoundly by climate change, and man's effect on that has been burning carbon. So yes, it might be symbolic, but I think that's what we're called to do, is be leaders and sometimes take a leadership position that maybe doesn't move the needle a whole lot, but does demonstrate to the rest of the community where our values lie. So I will be supporting it.
As long as you're aware that just a small percentage of gasoline or oil is used in cars, a lot of it is used for mostly other products.
Yeah, I get it.
That we need. So don't buy plastic.
Yes, and I would agree also that it is a symbolic measure, but that symbolism makes a big difference, and especially the more people that make that symbolic gesture, it sends a message to those companies. There are a lot of oil companies that are investing in renewable energies. They're looking to the future to expand their portfolios and transition away from oil. The particular two companies that are listed here are those that have been lobbying the other way. So I will also be supporting this. I think it's a symbolic gesture that's important, and it sends an important message to those companies and their shareholders, and it's a message that's being heard. The more people and organizations and investment groups that send this message, the more that it's heard by these companies, and the more that it can change the behavior and their outlook to the future and their investments.
You know, I think it sounds great. I just don't know how you implement it. And Steve Boyd, you know, is it even possible to divest ourselves in these things when we're actually investing in?
We're just being asked to send a letter asking them to divest. We're not actually divesting. So there you go.
You know, we're buying into funds, right? You can't control what's in that fund.
Mr. Steve Boyd, go ahead.
No.
Welcome.
I wish you could speak a little longer about that, Steve. Go ahead, Ingrid.
Oh,
That's all I got.
no, I guess I have always, I appreciate the sentiment. I think that ultimately it's kind of like going into the grocery store and not buying a product that you know has a history or reputation of X, Y, and Z. I think I agree with Councilor Hershey's comment, though, that there are ways to better demonstrate where our position is. And yet, you know, I go home to a house that's heated with natural gas. You know, so finding the balance between what I support and where my dollar goes, that's always been a really difficult dilemma. I think that we as a community have chosen to invest in renewable energy. And I think that has more of an impact than something like this. But this, to me, this is just a token sentiment, and I'm fine with supporting it if it's the general will of council.
I think we're about to see. Let's call unless somebody else has a
There's no motion.
Have a motion?
Oh.
Motion that we, support the letter of recommendation for divestment in fossil fuels, letter to portfolio managers for the bond funds. Is that specific enough? One in the packet, the letter in the packet. We support the letter for divestment from fossil fuels as a symbolic gesture.
I'll second that. Moved by Shelley, seconded by myself. Any further comments, questions?
I just wanted to say, I just don't see how this actually reduces the global demand for fossil fuels. That's where we should be focused, not on telling Exxon, look, we're going to divest. I just don't see what it is. But thank you.
And I'd say recycling, individually recycling doesn't do anything either.
No, it doesn't. No, that actually does help.
All right, let's go to the question.
Councilor Hershey.
No.
Councilor Calhoun.
Yes.
Councilor Wusso.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Walner.
Yes.
Mayor Groves.
Yes.
It passes 5-1.
Thank you, Mr. Foltz.
Oklahoma.
Okay, city manager report?
I sent you guys all an email earlier today that has come up with a plan with how we're going to take care of the debris in our river and also the rather large rock slide by Grizzly Creek. And I just wanted to draw your attention to it. It's one of those things I feel like we just have to do. So that's all I got.
You had in the packet the two permits on the noise thing for the light.
Oh, yes.
Is there a reason they were there?
Yes, because by law, I'm supposed to tell you every time that happens, but I forgot they were in there. So those are happening.
I noticed. Mr. Hershey has too.
Yeah, I noticed too.
I just have a short 45-minute PowerPoint presentation.
And it's voluntary, right?
Yeah, no, it's like important information now. Nothing this evening. I did want to say the CML, I was down as well as Charlie being there. A couple of good sessions on various issues that I think are going to be coming up. I think the engagement, I do want to say, I think the continued engagement of the city of Glenwood for smaller communities and resort communities, I think increasingly we're being viewed as taking a leadership role. And probably the biggest question I got was about what we've done on short-term rentals and how we're managing that, because we're one of the few communities that isn't just screaming hysterically in the moment of just being so pressured. And the housing was the other, issue that was large and on the table that I think everybody was talking about. So those were good things. So that was really kind of it. Absolutely.
I didn't make it there for the session that Deborah et al. Presented on Wednesday, but I had a meeting with the CML board that night, and everybody loved the presentation and wanted to hire Matt. So and a couple of them talked about Matt in general. I'll leave it at that.
Matt was a rock star.
He was.
That presentation, but they cannot steal him.
Highly respected.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.